Mohamed, if I read into what Dan Yergin's saying, is he's like, look, oil prices are back down to these levels. Maybe what they're indicating is that, we're eating up some of that growth that we saw from China back in 2003, 2004.
Yeah, if you look at demand and supply, it does not justify oil below 30. It simply does not. But what does justify oil below 30 is you've had a fundamental shift in the operating regime. You no longer have an effective swing producer. You no longer have OPEC reducing output when prices go down. And that is a real fundamental change that the market has to absorb. And it's going to take time. So yes, he's right that we're back to 2003, and it seems a little bit strange from a demand and supply perspective.
Right.
But you can explain it for now in terms of the swing producer issue.
So if you take that swing producer issue out, Mohamed, I mean, where do you think oil prices really should be?
Oh, higher than this. And they will be higher than this over time. We are going to see incremental, massive supply destruction. Massive. Okay? That's still ahead of us. Companies have been able to deal with that cash burn. They've cut their investment program. But we're getting to the point where prices are so low that you cannot even sustain your cash burn anymore. So we're going to see massive supply destruction. We're also going to see some pickup in demand, all of which is going to lead to higher prices over time. But this is not an instantaneous thing. This is going to take a number of years as people adjust to the fact that you don't have a swing producer.
Well, when you say supply destruction, it sounds so scary, though, Mohamed, right? Because that supply destruction, a lot of that is going to happen here in the United States with the, reversing the shale boom. Some of these producers in Europe, for instance, I mean, their economies are going to be, especially if they're reliant on energy, devastated. Look at what's happening to Norway and their currency. I see, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's going to have some big economic impacts, no?
Sure. You have to ask the question, what is the weight of the producer versus the weight of the consumer? In the old days, it was easy. We were mainly consumers. Now in the United States, we're both producers and consumers. So some people are hit hard, the producers. Some people benefit, the consumers. Now, some countries are dominated by production. You mentioned Norway.
Yeah.
Others are dominated by consumption. So there's going to be lots of different effects, both across countries and within countries.
And how deflationary do you think oil prices are going to be around the world?
So I think they're going to be deflationary when you look at the price component of nominal GDP, but they're going to be reflationary when you look at the output component of GDP. So don't underestimate the extent to which input prices are coming down. Now, it takes time for it to have an impact on production, but that's going to be reflationary versus the price component, which is going to be deflationary.
And talk about reflationary. We know Mario Draghi of the ECB has been trying to reflate the Eurozone economies. How do you think he's going to react to this, to what we've just seen in the last few days? Do you think the ECB could, in fact, increase their stimulus even more?
I think that's probably more than a 50% probability right now. I think the ECB has already increased it in the last few weeks, and as they look forward, they're going to ask the question as to whether they shouldn't do more. What you're going to see is a couple of things happen. You're going to see divergence in central bank policies get even larger. You're going to see the return of currency volatility among the big ones. We've been a pretty calm currency regime between the euro and the dollar. I think that's going to shift, and we're going to see the renewed volatility. But ultimately, it's not going to be very successful in promoting economic growth. For that, Betty, we need a much more comprehensive policy response, on both sides of the Atlantic.